the architect of echoes. Akito stood in the center of his new apartment, the silence heavy and sweet. For the first time in his 20 years, he was alone. The sun slanted through the blinds of the Tokyo studio, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny, forgotten stars. He had spent his life under the watchful, suffocating eyes of his parents, but today, he was the master of his own four walls. He felt a strange sense of victory, yet his hands trembled as he gripped the edge of a cardboard box. As he reached into a box, a sudden, sharp pressure pierced his temples. It wasn't a headache, it was a vision. He saw a rusted iron gate dripping with rain and heard the rhythmic tolling of a bell he had never encountered. He remembered living in a manor by a cliff, the smell of salt and old paper filling his lungs. But Akito had lived in the suburbs his whole life. He shook his head, trying to dislodge the phantom sensation, but when he looked down at his hand, he was holding a heavy silver key he didn't recognize. "Are you the new neighbor?" A voice chirped from the doorway. Akito jumped, the silver key vanishing into his pocket. Standing there was a girl with short, raven hair and eyes that seemed to hold a flicker of recognition. She introduced herself as Shiori. As she spoke, another memory surged. Akito remembered her, not as a neighbor, but as a sister he'd lost in a storm years ago. He felt the cold water on his skin and the grip of her small hand slipping away. "We've met before, haven't we?" Akito whispered, his voice cracking. Shiori tilted her head, her smile turning into something softer, more knowing. "I suppose we have," she replied. She stepped into his apartment, and as she moved, the room shifted. The modern wallpaper peeled back to reveal dark oak panels. The smell of the ocean grew stronger, drowning out the scent of cardboard. Shiori wasn't just a neighbor anymore. She was wearing the same white dress from his vision of the manor. Akito fled the apartment, stumbling onto the street. But the city was no longer Tokyo. The towering skyscrapers were gone, replaced by jagged cliffs and a single looming lighthouse that pulsed with a rhythmic, golden light. He checked his phone, but the screen displayed a map of a city that didn't exist. He realized with a jolt of terror that the world was changing to match the pictures in his head. Every memory he unearthed became a brick in the reality around him. Shiori appeared beside him on the cliff's edge. "You're doing it again, Akito," she said, her voice blending with the sound of the waves. "You're trying to build a home out of ghosts." He grabbed her shoulders, desperate for something solid. "Who are you? Why am I remembering these things?" He remembered a fire now, a great blaze that consumed the manor. As the thought took root, the lighthouse behind them erupted into flames, the sky turning a bruised, smoky purple. The world began to flicker like a dying film reel. Akito saw his parents' faces in the smoke, but their features were blank, like unpainted dolls. He remembered they weren't his parents at all. They were caretakers, keepers of a cage he had finally moved out of. The more he remembered, the more the real world dissolved into ink and static. He realized he wasn't reshaping reality. He was tearing the veil off the one he had been forced to live in. Shiori began to fade, her form becoming translucent. "The apartment was the last lie, Akito," she whispered. "You didn't move out to start a life. You moved out to end the dream." She reached out, her fingers dissolving into light before they could touch his. He reached back, sobbing, remembering the final truth. Shiori wasn't his sister or his neighbor. She was the part of his own mind that wanted to stay hidden in the safety of a fabricated life. Akito stood in a void of pure, blinding white. There were no cliffs, no manors, and no apartments. Just him, and the silver key he still held in his hand. He looked at the key and remembered its purpose. It didn't unlock a door in Tokyo or a gate at a manor. It unlocked the consciousness of the architect. He wasn't a student. He wasn't a son. He was the mind that had dreamed the entire universe into existence, because he couldn't bear to be alone in the nothingness. Akito turned the key in the air, and a final memory snapped into place. He saw a laboratory, thousands of years in the future, where a single brain floated in a pressurized jar labeled Project Akito, Simulation 4002. The parents, the college, the independence, it was all a sequence of code designed to keep a godlike AI occupied. He closed his eyes and began to remember a new world, one without keys, without memories, and without himself. The void began to ripple.